There's 3 ways to know that your shocks are bad. Number 1, you have oil leaking out, and that shows that the seals are bad and you're not holding pressure and you're losing oil. Another way is the ride quality. If your car continues to bounce after you hit a bump for a long time, then you know that your springs are doing their job. You got the oscillation, but that dampening that makes it quit bouncing up and down is your shocks. Another way that you can know, and the way that I know that they're bad on this aside from the ride quality, is the tire wear. When you look at this tire, you can see that there's some cupping on this side, and what that means is that it's all wavy. You'll notice that this tread block is a light color. It's got the dust and dirt on it, but its neighbors are dark. That's because it's sticking out further than the neighbors are. So when it oscillates, it makes the tire wear in kind of a funny way. So on a Jeep Commander or a Jeep Liberty or a Dodge Nitro, the setup's pretty much the same. You got to remember the 18-15 rule. You haven't heard of the 18-15 rule? It's because I made it up. It's not 15 millimeter, it's an 18 millimeter. So the nut on the back side of here is an 18, which is great. I got that on my impact gun ready to go. And then the nut here is a 15. So if you have a 15 millimeter socket and an 18 millimeter socket, a 15 millimeter end wrench, you're in business. So before we begin, I want to draw your attention to this guy right here. I have a jack supporting the axle. You want to do that because this is the member that's actually holding the axle up at this point. You have a track bar here, you have control arms in the front, but it still allows that to sag a long way. If it sags down too far, then you won't be able to reach, the bolts won't reach. So we put a jack in there. You do a floor jack or whatever you need to do. Usually if you do a hydraulic jack in the middle or something, that can work. But anyway, I like to have the extension. You know, it just makes it so you don't have to scrunch the shock up as far. Anyway, let's get this out of here, shall we? We'll get the 15 millimeter socket on and pull the top bolt. So you can leave that in place. We'll push the bolt out of the bottom. We'll just let it hang in that bolt. It can't fall out if the bolt's still in there. Pull it out, and how easy is that? That's pretty easy. Let's compare this with the new one and see what the difference between the two is. So you've got your 2 shocks here. You've got the old one that looks pretty decent, and when you go to collapse it, it's still got some resistance and it has some rebound. Those are good things. But when you compare it with the new one, and the thing about shocks is that they get bad over time, so you don't notice when they're bad. But when you start seeing your tires wear funny, that's when it's really going to get you in the pocketbook and it's something you can look at. So I'm going to push down on both of these, and this one, oh, right, there's a significant difference. And when they go to rebound, this one's singing, this one's barking, and this one's going a lot faster. It's rebounding a lot faster. When you pull this one out to the full length, I believe this one's longer. It's longer by just a hair. And let's put the new one in. So when you go to put the new one in, you kind of do the same thing. There's a little ding, a little detent here for the internal parts. I like to have that facing in because it looks like something's wrong with it, like it got hit by a rock. That's just me. So I put the bolt in. When you go to put the bolt in, the nut on the other side is welded to the vehicle. You want to protect that nut. You don't want anything bad to happen. For example, cross-threading. You're generally not going to cross-thread because you're going through a template on the outside. But I always like to start it with a few threads and then pull back on it and make sure that I'm in good to ensure that I don't cross-thread it. So here's a nut and a bolt. Pretend this is the nut that's welded to the vehicle. When you go to put them together, if you cross-thread, see, this is straight, this works. Cross-threading will also get it in there, especially, you see how it binds? That nut's holding on, but look how crooked it is. That's not straight at all. If I were to continue with it in that fashion, there you go, now you can see it's crooked. If I were to continue, it would just rip the threads apart and it would ruin it. You don't want that on something that you have to cut and weld and all that sort of thing, so that's why you do it by hand. It's so easy to do it right, just do it right. So now I'm going to release the jack down a little bit. Come on, jack down, mules. Get down. And you just adjust your jack so that you don't have to grunt or force it or tear up the threads and bash it in with a hammer. So that also protects the threads on this. when you have a jack to be able to get it just right. Put the nut on the back side here. And I already have a 15mm socket in, so I'll do the top one first. And then I'll switch for 18 and do the other. Well, when you look at this from the rear, there's an air gap there. There's a teeny tiny bit of air between the shock and these two plates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch that, but I'm going to torque this down so that everything binds on it. You see it stop moving? When it stops moving, you stop too, and then hit it a couple times. That's generally all that you need in order to have this stay in place so that it doesn't come undone, but so that you don't overdo it. I mean, you can crush it. I mean, a bolt force, there's bolt pullers, there's bolt installers. You can do a front wheel hub bearing with a big bolt. You can overdo it, you know, to where the bolt doesn't fail, but something else does. But if you get it to where you watch it stop and then snug it up just a little bit from there, that's about perfect. Let's do this again, shall we? You don't even have to pull a wheel off. I had to get the wheel off because the tire store destroyed my lug nut and wheel stud, so I had to pull it off and cut it all up. So I just loosened that one. I don't have my jack in place. That's what I need to be doing. You should be, you know, as Matt would say on Schrodinger's box, scream at your screen. I'm messing up. So we're going to move the jack over to that side. So you want to just take a little bit of the weight off of it. It's not a lot of weight, just enough to kind of get it into place. So I'm going to take my 15mm wrench, put it on here, and just hold that in place. Got this set to reverse. That's all there good, wasn't it? So I'm hanging in the top, got the 15 to where it's not threaded in, but it's just in there. We'll pull this out nice and easy, hang that down, grab it, pull the bolt. You'll find new shocks fit in a box better if there's a retention strap or something on there. So you can take this, put it into your abs, pull down. This is a good check to see how you're doing as a mechanic if you're staying in shape. Or you can put it against the floor and just lean down on it. It's up to you. If I just let that expand for a minute, you can even hang it up in here if you want while you're waiting for it to expand. You look at your two bolts, which one goes in the body side and which one has a nut on it. This has rust on the end, so you know that one's your nut one. And it's also just a little bit shorter. So we'll stick our shock up in there first. The lower you hold the shock and the more to the front, the easier it is to line up the hole. And then we know that the bolt goes from this side because our impact and our big socket was from the inside. I'm already set up with the 18mm, so I'll just carry on with what I'm doing there. Shocks are easy. You see it squeeze down there? It stops, hit it a couple more times. You notice the movement on this isn't very far after it stops. And we're in, that's all it takes.